Welcome to the Early Wedge presented by BetMGM. I am your host, Eric Cohen, aka AC. All right, so last week I gave out some picks here on the show, and they weren't that great. But if you did listen to my storyline and the live betting advice that I gave, you might have made some money, kind of like I did, and had Austin Eck wrote, you played the trends held up at PGA National. How will they do at Bay Hill this weekend? Let's find out. Let's bring in the stars of the show this week. We have the host of the Early Edge and one of the greatest golf bettors on the planet, Sia Nejad, plus one of the smartest golf minds that I know and also on the planet, one Patrick McDonald from CBS Sports. All right, Counselor, we'll start with you because I want to get right into your storyline because I think it applies to everything that we're going to talk about before our picks tonight, and that is what's going on with these winners, these triple-digit guys. Austin Eckroat doesn't move the needle for you?
Listen, I love Austin Eckroat, and if you watched the Early Wedge last year, you know I had him a lot, but I certainly didn't have him last week. In full disclosure, I appreciate the compliment, but I was bad last week. I think you just referenced how you were bad. My picks did not come through, and I think that kind of feeds into my storyline. I'm not making excuses, but will the real PGA Tour superstars please stand up? Because we haven't seen it. I don't know if you know this, but there's this competing tour. It's called Live. There's a lot of stars on that. When you look at the leaderboard on a Saturday or a Friday or a Sunday, we see names that are very familiar. I look at the leaderboard at some of these tournaments that we're looking at on the PGA Tour, and don't get me wrong, I still love betting these. I still love playing DFS. I still love doing all of that. But these names are not super recognizable, and I'm just waiting. Okay, we're at the API. It's literally littered with superstars. In fact, it's an invitational. They basically left the guys that normally win these tournaments, they left them on the side because they're forcing us to have a Patrick Cantlay or a Scottie Scheffler or a Rory McIlroy or a Ludwig Aubert. Either way, I am waiting for some of these PGA stars to actually get an outright. I'm waiting for some shorter odds to kind of put their stamp on the PGA Tour and kind of scream out, hey, there's stars over here too. So this is probably the tournament where it happens. Again, invitational nature. We got Scotty, we got Rory, we've got all the PGA Tour stars, but it's starting to become a problem from an optics standpoint. We need some of these guys to play really well, not just one, but multiple to be competing down the stretch on a Sunday early evening. We haven't had that yet. It's probably coming this week, but if it doesn't, I mean, watch out because, I think we need the ratings. I think we need the fervor of some of these superstars being there at the end.
Yeah, well, also you mentioned Sunday evening. It doesn't help that they started the tournament late. Patrick, just kind of respond your thoughts on what Sia just said about the lack of stars winning on the PGA Tour. Does that bother you?
I think it was probably anything that could go wrong for the PGA Tour in the first 2 months did go wrong. Not only did, lesser known players win, but like you said, that they didn't take into account the rain there on Sunday at the Cognizant Classic. You have a Genesis Invitational where everyone's hyped up, and then Jordan Spieth DQ, Justin Thomas MC, Tiger Woods WD, and it's really just I think that tournament really encapsulates the PGA Tour season to this point. And star winning at a course like Bay Hill would go a long way for them.
With that said, now see, you mentioned Live. And Live is they have a lot of top golfers, and we'll make some picks at the end of the show. But the fact is, their tournament in Saudi Arabia was on in the middle of the night. I was waking up here in Arizona and looking at the results that have been over for 3 hours. I mean, it wasn't something I could watch. And I think that's also a problem for that league. I know what they're trying to do. But with that said, I'd rather at least I can watch what's going on at PGA National. Now, Patrick, I play with a TaylorMade Spider putter, and it has some good moments and some not so good moments for me. Scottie Scheffler, it looks like, is going back to it this week. What do you think?
Well, if he had some good moments and not so good moments, that might be enough for Scottie Scheffler to win this tournament. Since the beginning of the year, he is first in total strokes gained, first in strokes gained tee to green, first off the tee, first on approach, third around the green. Putting, he is 66 in this field. And when you look at those players who have played 10 rounds at Bay Hill, guess what? Scottie Scheffler ranks first in strokes gained as well. And so I'm just happy he's doing something different because whatever he was doing on the West Coast was not working. You combine a switch with the putter. He doesn't have a line on the ball anymore. He's trying to feel like an artist. With the transition to Bermuda grass, a much smoother surface, and hopefully that can pay dividends for someone like Scotty, who is amid one of the all-time great ball striking stretches in PGA Tour history, and the winds haven't caught up. So an average putting week could mean a win for Scottie Scheffler.
Yeah, and I would say the same with Rory McIlroy. We'll talk about that later in the show. Same thing. Rory was amazing off the tee at PGA National, dreadful with the putter. Looked like me trying to putt out there, at least the way I have been with my spider putter lately. All right, my storyline. Sia, I'm actually going to come to you for this one. Are the books being more conservative with outright lines because of the rash of upset and triple-digit winners? In that, I saw some of the lines this week. I know it's a shorter field, but like the lines were probably a little too short on some players than they should be with top-end guys in the field. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree, but I don't know that it's different this week than it has been for 2024. I don't know what the holds are. I'd probably have to, I could probably ask some people if the holds are more significant on these outrights than they normally are, but I'm noticing a lot of these numbers are just way shorter than I would have thought. I will say this. These numbers get bet down immediately when they come out. Like, let's say if they come out like on a Monday morning, which is usually when we see them, a lot of the guys that we would like on this show, or that you, Joe, or Mark, or DBU, or Moshi, or Japan would like in the chat, because you're like, oh my God, this guy's been hot. He shouldn't be 50-1. Well, you're right. And that number gets bet down. I'm making this number up to 35-1 real quick. We see it every week now. So, it is one of those things. If you want to catch a good number on like a middle tier player, or I shouldn't say a middle tier, I should say a second or third tier player, you're going to have to act pretty fast, like on a Monday. As far as like the Scottie Schefflers and Rorys, those numbers generally don't change much. Neither really do like the Cantlays and the Hovlands. You might see a guy like Xander move down a little bit as some of these other guys get popular. But yeah, the holds are pretty significant. It's hard to find value sometimes, which is why, sometimes we simply don't force it.
If you are looking for some value right off the bat and you're a SportsLine member, the first column about golf that's on the site every Monday is one by our friend Patrick McDonald here, who gives out his initial leans. I think that's what it is right off the bat. So you can find that, and some of those numbers, you have some mid-tier guys, and those prices, I believe, have changed this week. What are your thoughts on the odds that we're seeing at the top of the board, or just in general, mid-board? Are they fair odds, or are they a little too short for you?
I agree pretty much with everything that Sia said. There seems to be a convergence almost. Like this week, I've seen like 40-1s out there for guys like Will Zalatoris, for guys like Justin Thomas. And then you have someone like a Harris English who is not playing. He's playing well, don't get me wrong, but he's not playing as well as Justin Thomas right now. And he was 75-1 at Open and down as low as 45-1 at some shops. So it just seems like it's really getting squeezed out so far. And it has been pretty difficult to find value.
Well, I can tell you one area where you're not going to get squeezed, and that's in the DFS market, because those prices don't change. Let's see what you guys have planned for this week. And see, I guess we'll start with you. You're fading a player that I know will come up later in the show. Why do you not like Xander Schauffele this week at this price?
Well, I'm looking at his ownership percentage, and, this can change. It's still kind of early on a Tuesday. But when I see a Xander, and again, your ownership numbers may look different than mine at the end on a Wednesday night or early Thursday morning. But when I see ownership for a Xander Schauffele that is more than, let's say, Ludwig Aubert, I'm out on that. I saw Xander's ownership at around 17-18%. And honestly, listen, I know Xander's really good, but I'm not sure I see the upside with Xander relative to, well, let's name every single golfer around him, right? Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Patrick Cantlay, Victor Hovland. Honestly, I'm not even sure I see the upside relative to like a Colin Morikawa. So unless I'm getting a Xander Schauffele in this talent-laden field, unless I'm getting Xander at ownership that is, 6 or 7 points less than most of the guys I just mentioned, I'm just going to be out on him. So at 9,800, I'll find a different place to spend my money. And one of those places is going to be Ludwig Aubert at 9,500. I'm noticing that his ownership percentage, and I think this is because of how people are building their lineups. People want to include either Scottie or Rory. You can build with both Scottie and Rory, and there's a bunch of 6K guys that are going to be popular for people. So it's really easy to have builds. And I think because people want to go up top to one of those two guys like Ludwig are getting kind of squeezed out a little bit. That doesn't mean he doesn't have any ownership. But when I look at I want to say Aberg so bad, but when I look at Aubert's upside, I just think it's tremendous. I think it's comparable to Victor Hovland. I don't want to put him in the category of Scottie or Rory, but I love the upside, and I love that the ownership doesn't appear to be approaching 20%. So if that's the case in DFS, I'm happy to play him. The other two guys, we mentioned one of them. I'll go down to 7,300, Harris English. the history here for Harris English is pretty great. And when you look at what he is doing lately in the recent history, by the way, over his last 3 years, 2nd, 26th, and 9th. So that's really good history. And you might say, okay, well, that's a bit of an anomaly, but that's like 3 tournaments where he's really played well. And he's doing everything from a recent history standpoint. He's doing everything well except for the approach game. I would almost call him like a poor man's Min Woo Lee, at least in terms of how the strokes gain metrics are shaping out. Obviously, Min Woo Lee's a lot longer than Harris English, so it's different. But if you look at what Harris English is actually doing off the tee, partly because he's pretty accurate, and you look at what he's doing with the short game, honestly, I think he's a bargain at 7,300. I think his ownership should probably be a tick higher. We notice it in the market. Patrick just said the market is appreciating him from a 75-1 outright to a 50 or 45-1. I think Harris English is a pretty smart play. And then Hideki Matsuyama, we know he just won, right? Like Hideki has the upside. The thing I like in particular about Hideki is, first of all, his short game is great. He just won, like I said. The ball striking can be inconsistent, but to the extent it is consistent, or to the extent we're looking for that spike tournament from Hideki Matsuyama, it's usually going to be on these long, difficult courses. So again, at 8,400, he's not getting absolutely ignored, but he's certainly not a popular play. All 3 of these guys, I think, can jump inside the top 20, potentially on a perfect week inside the top 10 or 15. So that's why I'm playing them.
I really want to learn for my own golf game how to do that pause at the top of my swing like Hideki does. Obviously, it worked for him at the Genesis and has worked for him well in his career. I have a feeling it would not work well for me. And producer Jake and Patrick, who are the scratch golfers, probably not recommend that. All right, Patrick, you love to give out the bargain chips, let's say, when it comes to DFS. But then I see you fading a 6,600, especially a guy that just finished in the top 5, top 10 over at PGA National. What are we doing here with Min Woo Lee?
Yeah, he finished runner-up, actually, EC. And, I mean, that's the reason he is in this field, got in through the Aon Swing 5, someone who wasn't in any of these signature events to begin the year. But he was a last-minute add in terms of DFS for DraftKings pricing. And Min Woo Lee is obviously not a 6,600 caliber player. And because of that, I mean, his ownership is going to be probably hovering around 20%. And no offense to him, but I think at that price, 20%, I'm okay fading him. I think the approach numbers were somewhat skewed. You look at his par 5 scoring from last week. He had a lot of long approach shots close, and that certainly helped the cause. So I'm okay, sitting off Min Woo this week, even though I love him. And instead, I'll go Adam Hadwin, 6,800, coming off a really nice finish there at the Genesis outside of the Phoenix Open, where, of course, I had money on him. He's actually had a great year. Iron play looks great. Really accurate out the tee, all around a great player. The length of the course could be a problem for him, but he's gotten around here effectively before. He has a top 10 in his career. Adam Scott, 7,500. He is playing like a top 20 player in the world at the moment. Ball striking is unbelievable. Pretty much the entire game is unbelievable. And he's the type of guy who wins at long, difficult golf courses, a great long iron player. He's going to be able to get his way around this golf course. So I like the Australian at that price. And then Chris Kirk, he's been somewhat meh since that win at the Century to kick off the year, but got back in Florida, got back on Bermuda, hit the ball well, top 20 tee to green, top 10 off the tee as well last week at the Cognizant. And he's been great at this golf course throughout his career. 4 top 15s in his last 5, including a T5 in 22. So give me Kirk at 7,800.
I think there's some sneaky ones on here. Sia, go ahead.
Let me point something out, because the Min Woo Lee fade, and honestly, Eric Van Rooyen is starting to creep up to that Min Woo Lee range in terms of ownership. We'll see how it pans out. I mean, I think Patrick's right. It'll end up probably being around 20% for Min Woo Lee, because it's obviously like a pricing error. Eric Van Rooyen will probably be in that 15 to 16% range. So I don't know if anybody plays like DFS, or I should say PGA cash. I mean, I think those would be fine cash plays, but there is a game we're playing in DFS. And by the way, I know, like, I heard what Patrick said, and I agree with him. This doesn't mean you absolutely can't play Min Woo Lee, right? If he's popular in the 6K range. But it does mean that if you are going to play him, you got to make sure the construction of your lineup is a little different than everybody else that's playing him, and that you're playing a couple of different guys, because you cannot forget that you're playing a game here. And if you have a lot of the players that everybody else has, when that player goes off, you're not passing many people, right? Because all those other players that are playing that same player are just going right along with the ride with you. So it's something to keep in mind when it comes to Min Woo Lee. Doesn't mean you can't play him or EVR, but I will point out in that 6K range, because they're so popular and because so many builds are starting with Scotty and or Rory and going down to Minwoo Lee and maybe EVR, because so many builds start like that, it leaves everybody else in the 6K range in the 5% or lower range. So if you spike on an Adam Hadwin, for example, or really anybody else that's not named those two guys, then you're in really good shape to pass a lot of people. The last thing I want to say, Japan pointed it out. He says that Minwoo Lee song goes hard AF. I blasted it on the way to Topgolf. For anybody that doesn't know what Japan is talking about, I have this song and a piece of the video pinned to my profile. I absolutely love creativity. It's what I'm all about. I do Twitter Spaces. I do Sia Nejad Sports on this creativity stuff and just kind of like going after your goals. This guy Thorpe, again, the song is pinned to my profile. He did this Minwoo Lee song that is so good. Everybody go check it out. Guys that are creative or girls that are creative like that deserve recognition. And this Minwoo Lee clip and the full song, which you can find on Spotify or iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your music, it's really, really good. It'll get you hyped up 100%.
I heard, both of your logic makes sense, but with somebody having a cool song, which I haven't seen yet, I can't fade him, especially at that price. Now, listen, I always believe in when you put together a DFS lineup, you got to differentiate somewhere. You can't spend, you don't have to worry about spending, to the last dollar. So you have $0 remaining. If you have to make a, put it in Adam Scott instead of a guy in the 8,000s where, a guy with upside, as Patrick pointed out, maybe that's the way that you differentiate if you were to add him in to your lineup. But I guess your explanation makes sense based on, I thought you were just going to strictly just fade Minwoo Lee coming off a good outing, but it makes sense. All right, let's move on to FRLs. Dustin wanted to know, Patrick Cantlay, will he be on your list, Sia? Patrick Cantlay coming off, at Riviera, we thought he was going to go wire to wire. I was hoping to get the first cash here on the show. And then, of course, Patrick does that in Mexico the following week with Jake Knapp. So, all right, what do you have for us, FRL, right off the bat?
Yeah, I'll say this about Patrick Cantlay. I'm really struggling in DFS, and I considered him as an outright as to whether to play Patrick Cantlay. I'm going to check on his ownership in a second. I think it's just in that sort of like that Xander range, in that 15 to 20%, which isn't bad, isn't good necessarily. But I'm not going to have Patrick Cantlay on this card. But if you were going to tell me that Patrick Cantlay is going to have, I think he's a really good course fit, and I think Patrick Cantlay, when he turns it on, can win any tournament. But I'll say the same about Victor Hovland. I think Victor Hovland is a great course fit. He has very good history here. His recent form hasn't been very good, which I think might strike people as odd that, like, well, why are you playing Victor Hovland of all things at first round leaders? You're going to turn it around in round one. Actually, the answer is probably yes, because these superstars tend to do that. I really don't care about recent form that much unless it's something really striking. I don't care about recent form too much unless it's like a middle tier or lower tier golfer. These superstars can turn it on at any given moment. And for the record, last time out, Victor Hovland, I believe, was at the Genesis. He played pretty well. The ball striking was there. The short game kind of lagged behind a little bit, but the ball striking was there. So I do think his ball striking is back. And for a first round leader, that's what we're looking for, right? We're not really focused on around the green game as much. That can save you around potentially, but we're looking for great driving, good total driving, which Victor Hovland can do. Great approach, stick the landing on these fast greens and find a hot putter. And so Victor Hovland can do that. I'll say the same for Will Zalatoris. Will Zalatoris and Victor Hovland, especially on long, difficult courses, play really well. Will Zalatoris' recent form is very good. Hideki, a guy who can pop. We've kind of been over that. He can pop in first rounds as well, of course. And Keegan Bradley's another guy that rated out pretty well. I honestly wasn't going to include him on the card, but when I saw 50-1, I thought it was worth it. I don't think he can win this tournament. I think his recent form is a little checkered, but one thing we know about Keegan Bradley is he's very comfortable at the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill. His track record here over his last three is very, very good. So if he's going to regain his form, it's very likely going to be here.
So back in the day when Patrick was working somewhere before CBS Sports, he used to put out FRL columns, and I actually cashed one with him based on one of his picks. So Patrick, of the ones that Sia gave, which was, I believe, Zalatoris, Hovland, Matsuyama, and Bradley, which is the one that you would put your money on for this particular tournament?
Keegan Bradley is a first-round fiend, especially in the state of Florida, too. I feel like he's always homing there at the Valspar Championship in particular. I feel like he's been the first-round leader at least 3 times in his career. But I believe I bet Bradley first-round leader in this tournament last year, came close. So I'd go Keegan at 50. Seems like almost an auto, it seems like.
Yeah, 2 of the last 3 years at API, he's had really good first rounds. Not enough to take it down, but we're talking like 1 or 2 strokes back each time.
the most profitable element of this show thus far, I believe, has been matchups. So, and also Patrick and I have had this little budding showdown rivalry. Will it continue again this week? We'll find out after we hear from one of our sponsors.
Out there are two colossal beings, both forces of nature in their own regard. But in here, as soon as the chute bursts open, the duality of man and beast begins to fade. This is the PBR on CBS Sports Network.
All right, now it's time for what everybody has been waiting for, another potential showdown. We'll see. I want to hear his logic first. All right, Patrick, you have 3 matchups this week on the show. Let's start with Chris Kirk over Tom Hoge. You talked about Kirk a little bit earlier, how you liked him, showed some nice things tee to green. Why do you like him over Tom Hoge, who also is a great iron player?
Yeah, Tom Hoge is playing great golf at the moment. Has played great at Pebble Beach, has played at the Genesis Invitational. The thing about those 2 golf courses, which is different from Bay Hill, is inaccuracy and just poor total driving overall does not really hinder your chances too much. And despite Tom Hoge being a great iron player, I mean, his approach numbers are popping. He hasn't figured out Bay Hill for one very particular reason, and that's because he's short off the tee and he's inaccurate off the tee. And when you're that at Bay Hill, you can't let the irons eat. No matter what, you're going to be missing a lot of greens, and he doesn't have the short game to keep up. So give me Chris Kirk, who I know can get around this place and is hitting the ball well at -120. I like Tommy Fleetwood -110 over Max Homa. Homa has a great track record here in 4 starts. Fleetwood's done pretty well himself. I just think Fleetwood's the better golfer at the moment. Homa seems to be going through something with his swing. Didn't have it on the West Coast, which is very uncharacteristic for Max Homa. So I know he's taking some time off, but I'll take the Englishman at -110. And then Xander +105 over Victor Hovland. Hovland's kind of in the same boat of Max, in my opinion. I mean, he dumped his short game coach. The numbers back it up. They're not as good as last year. And he's working on his full swing. He skipped the Farmers Insurance Open to work on it in Florida. And while the numbers were better at the Genesis Invitational, you look at some of the proximities from over 175, they're not Victor Hovland caliber at the moment. And so because of that, even though he has a great course history, I'll take Xander, who's got that all-around game and the form at +105.
Now, Xander was very close to my no-bet list on the outrights, but I do love betting Xander. He has, 4 top 5s in his first 5 starts this year. Victor Hovland in the last 2 years here, as you mentioned, a T2 in 2022, a T10 last year, has been excellent with his ball striking, has gained over 9 strokes each of the last 2 years here. So, Patrick, I'll take Hovland over Schauffele. Are you in or are you out?
I was going to challenge him to the same thing. That's funny. But no, you can just do it with it. You can do it with AC.
Do you want a double? Do you want a double showdown?
First, I'll talk to Joe in the chat. These are at DraftKings. I believe Kirk's at MGM. As for you two, the children in the room, Jake, go ahead and play that music.
Wow, here we go.
It's gonna be a showdown.
One thing I have learned is to not go with the counselor, because it was a very painful strategy when I did that last year. So I like having you on my side, Sia. Patrick, you're good with full showdowns for both of these.
Yeah, buddy.
All
I'm the one who's cashed Jake Knapp on this show. I've got some.
You got plenty of money. You got plenty of money to spend. Sia, let's hear what you got. You're going Ben on. You're fading Tom Kim, who kind of let me down on some finishing positions that I bet during the tournament. It was miserable during the last round, so you like Ben on instead.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ben on. And by the way, this Ben on one over Tom Kim is at Caesars. The next one I'm going to talk about, the Cameron Young one, is at DraftKings. Listen, Ben on has been playing really well. I do worry about his accuracy a little bit off the tee, but his off the tee numbers have been spectacular. That's really going to serve him well here. And really everything else grades out pretty well for Ben on. I mean, obviously he does have some putter issues, but I don't want to say the API is a tournament for Team No Putt necessarily, but you can certainly get away with, kind of being a weaker putter out here at Bay Hill. So Ben-An over Tom Kim. Listen, this is more of a fade of Tom Kim than it is a play on Ben-An, but I do like Ben-An. I do like his form. I do think he has upside. There's a reason in DFS circles his ownership is starting to creep up a little bit, and Tom Kim just hasn't really had the form. He's certainly more accurate, but he's not going to be better than Ben-An off the tee, and he just hasn't shown me any of the old Tom Kim that we saw about a year, 12, 14 months ago. So I'm happy to take this at -115. Again, this one over at Caesars. This other one, again, DraftKings, Cameron Young -120 over Jason Day. Jason Day's confusing because there are some things I looked at that looked really good for Jason Day, other things I looked at that weren't very good. But either way, Cameron Young just, first of all, his play lately has been very good. Okay. And he's a great course fit. He should really take advantage of this course, particularly off the tee and everything. If everything else falls into place, sometimes the short game, the around the green game can be a little checkered for Cameron Young. But as long as it's anywhere close to decent, he can even be a negative there. As long as he's good everywhere else, he's going to beat Jason Day. So give me Cameron Young -120 over J Day.
All right. I am sticking with a -120 myself. I'm going Keegan Bradley over Adam Scott, who Patrick talked up earlier in the show. Now, the thing about Scott that I don't like is that he's lost strokes on approach in his last 4 here and more than 10 combined strokes on approach in those 4 tournaments, which is not a good sign. He has no top 10s in his last 6 at Bay Hill. That's a little scary. Meanwhile, Keegan Bradley in his last 3 here, T10, T11, T10, sounds good to me and has gained multiple strokes with his ball striking in his last 8 tournaments at Bay Hill. Likes this place, -120. Now, listen, Patrick's logic on Adam Scott makes a ton of sense. He's playing great. But Keegan Bradley, I love the course fit here, so I'm going to roll with that at -120. And then I'm just fading Colin Morikawa here, and I do like Jordan Spieth this week, and I'm going to take him at +105. Morikawa has lost more than 10 strokes putting in 3 trips here. Dreadful. I mean, that's something that I would do. Well, I'd lose more than that, but that's for another time. Anyways, Spieth in 2 trips to Bay Hill, T4 and T4. Can't get much better than that. He has gained strokes in nearly all categories each time, lost a fraction of a stroke off the tee the first time around, which is a key stat here at Bay Hill, but he was better last year. I expect him to put on a very good performance this weekend, so I am fading Colin Morikawa here. Now, on to finishing positions. Patrick, you don't have any, but don't worry. I will come to you with a couple of questions based on what you see on the screen here. But Sia, you and I are kind of in alignment on Will Zalatoris. You got him at a little bit better price than I did. Why do you like Zal this week in the top 20?
Yeah, and this +110 at the T20, it's going to be at DraftKings. What's really interesting is when I look at Zalatoris in matchups and really in terms of where he opened, I mean, the market wasn't really respecting Will Zalatoris, and I don't know that I can figure out why, to be honest with you. He rates out really, really well. And we've seen, like, obviously I was very nervous about the back issue, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. I really wasn't playing him when he was playing well. But the back issue was a thing of the past, and he just rates out really well. Much like Victor Hovland, the ball striking is there. The weighted tee to green is there. Ball striking on long and difficult courses is there. I just think, again, over the last 3 tourneys, if you look at his ball striking and his short game, I mean, this guy is very clearly ascending. And by the way, if you don't want to just lock in strokes gain metrics, that's cool. Well, what about his finishing positions? 13th and 2nd over his last 2 tournaments. Like, I'm not exactly sure what the hang up is on Will Zalatoris. So I can sneak him inside the top 20 at plus money. I'm going to do that every time. And listen, full disclosure, I've been very bad in this market. Like over the last 2 to 3 weeks, the finishing positions, I've straight up been bad, which is why I kind of like reeled it in a little bit and only gave out 1 finishing position play, because this one I'm well, take this for what it's worth, very confident. And I didn't want to litter the card with 3, 4 plays. There's 3 people on this show. You know, it's kind of one of those things where you can kind of take pieces of everybody's card or one person's card or 1.5 people's card. So I wanted to make sure I stay disciplined here since I haven't been great in this market. Give me Will Zalatoris T20 at plus money. Yeah, well, I littered here last week, and it did not go well. This was where I struggled. So I'm going right back at it. You can't stay down. Shoot or shoot. Yeah, exactly. Shoot or shoot. Will Zalatoris, you talked about it. Top 10, I'll take him at plus 240. I like him there. Top 20 at even money. I got these all at MGM, and MGM, don't forget, is the only sportsbook that pays out ties in full, just with their regular odds. I know Bet365 also has a bet, pays out ties in one of their sections. I also like Matt Fitzpatrick here, plus 240, top 10, plus 100, so even money, top 20. 4 top 10s and a T14 in his last 5 here. The poor recent form, I get it, but I'm playing the course history over that. I know that's risky. And then I'm playing a guy, and this is normally not like me. Usually, you guys know me. It's all about course form, course history. Jake Knapp. Is there anyone who's been a better ball striker
over the last month on the PGA Tour than Jake Knapp. So a top 20 at plus 140, it makes sense. He has 3 top 4 finishes in his last 4 events. Between the Farmers Insurance Open, Mexico Open, and the Cognizant Classic, he's gained more than 25 strokes ball striking. If he does even a fraction of that this week, and the putter is halfway decent, yeah, he can sneak in the top 20, and we're getting some nice juice at plus 140. Now, if you were watching the show last week, go ahead, Sia. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Michael Potter says, I'm seeing Zalatoris at plus 280, top 20 on DK. Am I missing something? Yes.
Yeah.
You're looking at top 10. You're looking at top 10, not
top 10. Also, you have to remember, so the plus 240 that I got at MGM pays out in ties. The plus 280 is subject to dead heat rules on DK.
Good call.
And so remember that in some of the sports book. All right, Patrick, what Sia and I gave out, Zalatoris, Fitzpatrick, and Jake Knapp. Which is your favorite of those if you had to pick one?
Ooh, put me on the spot.
You can say none of them if you don't want to.
No. I am a fan of Matt Fitzpatrick this week. I am. You will see later. I'm a fan of Matt Fitzpatrick. So based on my selections, he should have no issues finishing inside the top 10 and 20.
As I mentioned, the one sports book where you can bet all of these finishing positions props and get paid on full on ties is at BetMGM. If you aren't a BetMGM member, it's time to get going here. As new BetMGM customers can sign up today and get $150 in bonus bets. Just place your first wager of at least $5 and you'll receive $150 instantly in bonus bets, regardless of your wager's outcome, with bonus code EDGE150. That's EDGE150. Last week, Patrick and I had kind of a showdown with my auto fades list. Has anyone been added to that list? We'll talk about that with outrights coming up here after we hear from one of our sponsors.
The blackout mystery remains.
Welcome to March Madness. Oh! You just never know in the tournament who is going to shine.
Stream March Madness live on any device, anywhere, and be ready for anything.
We have a new addition this week to the I Can't Bet Them up top. And Patrick, you get this player. You get Shane Lowry, who has won 0 PGA Tour events that are not a WGC in the United States. He's won 1, and it was a WGC event, the WGC Bridgestone in 2015. So right now, these are guys, and you, for the next 3 tournaments, if one of these guys wins, I owe you $100. And if not, vice versa. Tommy Fleetwood, Sam Burns, Sahith Theegala, Cam Young, Scotty Scheffler, since he's under plus 1,000 this week, Patrick Cantlay, Tony Finau, and Shane Lowry. How are you feeling about your chances of winning our showdown?
Fantastic. Are you kidding me? You give me Scotty Scheffler, who easily could have won this golf tournament last year. You give me him at the Players Championship. Then we go to the Valspar, where someone like, Sam Burns and Tommy Fleetwood have played great. And then, just for fun, we have Patrick Cantlay, one of the best all-around players in the world. We have Tony Finau, Shane Lowry, Cam Young, who might even win this week too. So I'd be surprised if it extends past this week with that list.
I'm feeling great about this list, and we will keep adding every week. And when I do add, you'll get those players for the remainder of the Florida swing. Now, on your card this week, you have all 3 of these guys that we've talked about earlier in the show. So start with Cam Young. Why are you so bullish on Cam Young this week?
Because it looks like Cam Young actually learned how to putt. And that has been a big problem for Cam Young throughout his career, definitely during his sophomore campaign. So I like Cam Young a lot at 28-1. He's a great course fit, a great driver of the golf ball. He does have the wayward miss every now and again, but he's proven capable of getting it around Bay Hill with a couple of nice finishes and 2 appearances. So the rapper Young Cam, I know he's very difficult to bet on, given people love to bet on him, and Young Cam does not love to win, but I think anything north of 28 you can go with. And then Matt Fitzpatrick, like I said, 33-1. Fantastic history as well. I believe it's 5 straight top 15 finishes, something in that neighborhood. Finished runner up to Molinari in 19, I believe, and gained throughout the bag there at the Cognizant Classic. Has kind of been meh this year, to tell you the truth. I got burned by him at the Genesis Invitational, but I like him on Bermuda. And if the driver turns around, it needs to get much better for Fitzpatrick. But if it does this week, then the rest of his game is there. And then Adam Scott, like I said, 50-1, anything north of that, I'm cool with. Just hitting the ball super well. I'm not too concerned about his recent starts here, just because I think he's a completely different player right now.
Counselor, I got to admit, and I don't usually say this, I absolutely love your card this week. These were Hovland and Aubert were like 4 and 5 on my list. We want to cut it down to 3 for this particular, part of the show. But I absolutely love your card. Not that I don't like Patrick's card, but I need Cam Young to lose because, we have a bet on that. But Sia, why do you like Victor Hovland and Ludwig this week?
What I heard is that you don't like Patrick's card.
Victor Hovland, I don't mind it. I don't hate it.
Listen, I'll be quick here. And for the record, Patrick, I cashed in on Jake Knapp too, thanks to you. Not a play I gave out. I tailed you because you've been hotter than me, particularly in the outright market. Yeah. So let me give you credit. Listen, I don't want to go over Hovland, Aubert, and Zalatoris too much because I have been talking about them quite a bit. But I'll just remind everybody that Victor Hovland, again, superstar. Just because the form has been just a little checkered. Again, ball striking last time out was actually quite good. Hovland can turn it on at any moment. We saw that last year. We've really seen that throughout his career. He's been 10th and 2nd here over his last 2 years. So listen, at plus 1,600, we're not getting a steal necessarily, but this is a very fair number, maybe a slightly depressed number because of the recent form. So I'll take Vic. Aubert, I want the short game and the ball striking to pair together. And if it does, he's going to win. There are so many tournaments where the ball striking is just kind of whatever when we're looking at the strokes gain metrics. And then there are others where he really, really pops. And then he pairs that with the putter or with the short game, and he can win a tournament, even a tournament that starts with Scottie Scheffler and Rory McIlroy. Will Zalatoris at 33-1 or 30-1. I've seen it as low as 28-1. I still think I would take it there, but now we're starting to get too short. But again, Zalatoris, the way he's been playing over the last couple of tournaments, he has really been ascending. And when I see where the finishing positions were, and I pair that with what the ball striking is looking like, and how he plays on courses that have talented fields and long and difficult courses, that's a good number on Will.
You can call me a chalk chaser for Rory McIlroy at plus 900. Well, he's the second chalk, but listen, it's a guy that's gained 18 strokes in 18 straight stroke play events off the tee. It's phenomenal, and it plays, obviously, as Patrick talked about earlier in the show, how important it is at Bay Hill. He has 6 top 10s in his last 7 here, including a win in 2018 and a T2 last year in the surprising Kurt Kitayama victory. If the putter cooperates, he wins. And you can say the same about Scottie. And Patrick, we were talking about that, off air, that you could say if Scottie, or earlier in the show as well, if Scottie putts well enough, he could win. I'm saying the same about Rory at plus 900. Jordan Spieth here, plus 2,200. 2 top 10s in 4 tournaments this year, including that weird DQ at Riviera. T4 both times here. He doesn't spray the driver. The short game is good enough to win for the first time since the RBC Heritage in 2022. Likes these coastal courses, it seems. Will Zalatoris, as Sia just talked about, it's the elite ball striking. It's real. And the putter's a lot better. He does that Adam Scott long putter thing, which maybe I need to try if my TaylorMade Spider doesn't work much longer. I'm going to try that long putter thing. I still don't know how that would work, but regardless, it's worked for Will Zalatoris because he's in the green when it comes to strokes gained putting. And he was a T10 here in 2021, even without great putting numbers. So I'm going to roll with Zalatoris as well with Sia at that big price. Now, there's another tournament going on this week. Patrick, you and I are staying away from it. My boy Rasmus Højgaard is the favorite. He let me down last week, so I can't bet him at 16-1. But Sia, you have a couple of picks for the Puerto Rico Open. Good for you. What are you throwing out here?
Yeah, I'll say this. I took Ben Silverman at 50-1. It's now down to 35-1. He's not necessarily the best course fit, but I just wanted to point that out that he was on my card and then it went down 15 points, and I just didn't think it was worth it. If you can find Ben Silverman in that 50 range, I think it's good. Sam Stevens is kind of like, I don't want to say it's a throwaway. I don't believe in that one as much as I believe in Robert McIntyre. So if you're only going to pick one, Bobby Mack is the play, because Sam Stevens, while I do think he's good course fit and he can be really good off the tee, the form really hasn't been there. This is a much lesser field. We'll see what happens. I think 45-1 is at least a decent number to speculate on, but I think my favorite play, and I think this was like 45-1 1 or 2 days ago. If you can catch a 35 or something, that's great. Bobby Mack off the tee, that's going to be really important here, is really good. And if we saw what he did last time out, not at this tournament, his last tournament, which was last week, Bobby Mack was gaining kind of everywhere. So, I mean, if he's got his other parts of his game like in play here, and he's going to be smashing it off the tee and getting it out there long, which is going to be important here, then I think he is very live to win. So I really like Bobby Mack at 30-1.
All right. Very good picks there. I don't have anything for you. Patrick, do you have anything about the Puerto Rico Open that you can give us any wisdom about?
Someone asked for a one and done selection for it. I think Ben Griffin could be a fun play, or even, Daniel Berger's been hitting the ball great since his return. The short game's been horrible, but I mean, we've seen someone like Victor Hovland win here, so maybe the short game doesn't matter too much.
That is fair. All right, now it is time back. We're going to go back to Bay Hill. We're going to go back to the Arnold Palmer Invitational for our long shots category. And Patrick, we'll stick with you. You talked about Chris Kirk earlier in the show, and you like him at a big number, plus 6,600. Why do you like Kirk at that number?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen him win a signature event already. This number has been dancing around. I've seen as low as 50. I saw 75 today as well. If you shop at a place that makes books. And so I think Chris Kirk at 66 is probably around the right price. And the ball striking came back last week. We know what he can do around this golf course, and we know what he can do in a field of this caliber. So why not?
Sia, you like Harris English, plus 5,500. You talked about him earlier in the show. Give us why that's good value for him to win in a field of this caliber.
Yeah, for one, he's been really, really good here. The finishing positions have been great. And for the record, his recent form has been good. I tweeted something out a couple weeks ago. I was like, hey, everybody, Harris English, I think it was 200 to 1, is 200 to 1 at the Masters, like pretty much everywhere. Maybe it was 150. I can't remember. I actually bet it myself. But the point is, this is a guy that's getting unrecognized. I understand why. He's not hyper talented relative to the top of this board, but with the recent history and the course history, and knowing that he's doing it in the strokes gain metrics department outside of approach, and, you know, hopefully maybe he can get hot with approach. There's a reason the market is opened at a certain number with Harris English, and it's being bet down to 55, 50, sometimes I think in some places maybe even 45 to 1. Harris English, if those two guys at the top or the group at the top just has a middling tournament, Harris English could at least be in the conversation.
All right, that's fair enough. All right, I got three parlays for you. Can't resist in this section. Top finish parlay, Scotty Scheffler, top 5, Victor Hovland, top 10, Xander, top 20. I think Xander's going to do okay. I just think Victor Hovland's going to do better, which is why Sia and I made that showdown against Patrick earlier in the show. But I think Xander top 20, and I had him in the top 10 of my fantasy rankings in the article on SportsLine.com. So I'm going to roll with that. Plus 1,200, some good value there. Top 20 parlay, Hovland, Jordan Spieth, Ludwig Oberg. I got to get it right. At plus 450. And at top 20 parlay, this one, a little juicy odds, so I had to go with it. Will Zalatoris, Jason Day, Keegan Bradley. Now, Day, a little bit here. I guess he's a former winner here. You don't know what you're going to get for top 20 at these odds. I like Zalatoris. I like Bradley, and I can get behind Day. So I'll play that at plus 1,100. Now, for the final segment of our show, Patrick and I have done actually pretty well. Now, we slipped up last week. We did not have Joaquin Niemann, but this week I decided to kind of copy your logic a little bit. Who do you like in LIV? And they're playing in Hong Kong.
Yeah, LIV Golf Hong Kong. This will start, I believe, Thursday evening for us on the East Coast. So just a heads up. I know they usually get going on Friday. And yeah, Louis Oosthuizen isn't going to come through for me. Another runner-up. I think that's number 3 on the year, unfortunately. He's like my white whale at this point. I bet him in all 3 LIV Golf events so far. Why not make it a 4th? He's playing some great golf dating back to this past fall where he won back-to-back on the DP World Tour. So this course is tight off the tee, shot maker's golf course. I think that's Louis Oosthuizen into a tee. So at 22, with how much respect Joaquin and Rahm are getting in the market, I think there is some value in that. And then Patrick Reed, he's kind of just been bad, honestly, this season on LIV Golf. Like, hasn't really done a whole lot, but you look at last year, he didn't really make a ton of waves, but when he did, I mean, he had like 5 top 5 finishes, a couple podiums as well. And so 50 to 1, I think I mentioned last week, there's like 20 guys who can realistically win on LIV Golf. And I think Patrick Reed is one of them. And so at 50 to 1, I think he's a nice long shot option.
What odds would you bet Anthony Kim at? I think he's 500 to 1 now. Would you play him anything under $1 million to 1?
I mean, if anyone ever gives you odds 10,000 to 1, you got to take him.
Not for Anthony Kim's not. I think you could compete with Anthony Kim right now, especially in a course in Hong Kong, which is not a very long course. So I think with your game, I think you and Jake can compete with him.
You missed the Office reference, but no, I mean, professional golf is a completely different game. I think a lot of people gave him a lot of crap for around a 76, which 12 years removed from the landscape is very impressive, in my opinion.
Can't bet him, no. Can't bet him. Unbettable. All right.
No,
Sia.
absolutely not.
No, can't bet him in any capacity. All right. Sia, this is a short course, as I mentioned. So I don't think it's any, it kind of makes sense why you're picking Bryson DeChambeau, especially at 12-1.
Yeah, I mean, we had a shorter shot win last week. I was actually thinking about taking Joaquin Niemann. Keep in mind, I told you last week, I don't study this. I don't write the articles and do the research you guys do. So I'm really just kind of throwing a player out. But I've seen how Bryson's done it. Well, first of all, last fall, we saw him last year win a couple. And I like the trajectory he's on. 4th place last week at Golf Jeddah, T9, T25 before that, T11 before that. And by the way, don't forget, like pre-Bryson blowing up, he was quite the tactician. So I think I think his game translates pretty much everywhere. So I think at plus 1,200, he's certainly live to win.
On a short course too, I think it's under like 6,800 yards. I mean, this is not a long one. He could completely overpower this course. So that makes a lot of sense. I picked Rory McIlroy to win. He's my top pick for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. And if you remember last week, Taylor Gooch mentioned that he is, that if Rory wins the Masters, that it would have an asterisk because the best players are not there. Now, I'm going Taylor Gooch at plus 1,200. His last 8 live rounds have been in the 60s. He's posted results this season, T15, T2, T6. He won 3 times on the circuit last season. It's been good enough for him to win again this week. He's priced low enough. Don't necessarily love the price, but I do like the form and the player at plus 1,200. And I'm going with Louis just for the reasons that Patrick said. He's playing some great golf, and I think Louis definitely makes a lot of sense. Now, one thing about LIV that I want to talk about before we get going here. So they've ended their bid for World Golf Ranking Accreditation, and they're going to focus on working with the governing bodies of the major championships to get more of their players in the fields. Patrick, your thought on this? Is this a good move to go away from the OWGR and just kind of like beg the majors, please put our best guys in? Or is there a better solution to this?
How long you got, AC?
I'll say 90 seconds.
I think it is. You got to know who runs the OWGR. The OWGR has a 7-person board. 4 are from each of the 4 major championships. You got the PGA Tour as well, the DP World Tour, and then the PGA Tour Federations, which is run by a DP World Tour exec. And so essentially, I think neither Live Golf nor the OWGR put their best foot forward in this situation. Live Golf didn't try to play by the rules, right? The OWGR came back, said they don't like the closed shop. Live Golf didn't really change a whole lot about that. They said they didn't really like the team component. They changed nothing about that. OWGR, though, from their point of view, this hasn't reached a tipping point where someone like Brooks Koepka is out of their fields, correct? All the big names, all the stars have status through, 2024 through this year, since the 2025, maybe 2020 winners, Bryson and DJ. So because of that, this OWGR conversation is centered around Taylor Gooch. And no offense to Taylor Gooch, but no one's going to lose sleep over, let's say he's the 40th best player in the world. No one's going to lose sleep if the 40th best player in the world is not at the Masters. And so what the majors can do, who, mind you, run the OWGR, like I said, they can invite these players as they see fit, like one Joaquin Niemann. So I don't know what I make of it, but I know neither side really put their best foot forward, in my opinion.
I think that's a great take. Sia, do you have any opinion as far as either side making a mistake here? Should Liv be pushing for it and saying, come on, we'll take any rankings that we can get, even if it's not going to get us to the top? Or is it better just to say, all right, this isn't going to work. We're going to plead with the majors and say, let our best guys in?
I co-sign what Patrick McDonald said. And for the record, I'm still waiting for this merger to happen. Sincerely, Sia Nejad Esquire. Like, let's move this thing along.
They might need a new attorney. I know the right guy. Patrick, when is this merger going to happen?
I am not optimistic about it in any sense.
And there you have it. An expansive early wedge this week. We covered so much ground. We hit 3 golf tournaments. We talked about, the world of professional golf. We got winners. One of us is cashing something this week, and money will change hands with a showdown between Sia and I against Patrick. So check that out. Appreciate all of you watching. Thanks to Patrick McDonald. Thanks to Sia Nejad. Thanks to producer Jake behind the scenes. I am Eric Cohen. And as I always like to say, let's hit it big. Good luck.